Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. And Kathy and I want to welcome you to the Big Book Comes Alive Step Study Workshop, week number 65 of this cycle. We are in chapter 9. We're about to get into chapter 9, the family afterwards. And as I understand, a number of folks said they did not get the email. So please, if you didn't get the email, send me an email and let me know that, because I'm trying to switch over to using Gmail rather than AOL. And if it's not working any better than AOL, I'll go back to AOL. So please let me know if you didn't get the email, because they all went out today, all of them. I didn't check how many got returned, but if you didn't get it, please let me know. Send me an email. But since some of you didn't get it, let me just put this up. Andy, if you'll put up the screen share, the thoughts on the family afterwards. Um, just to kind of summarize what this chapter is about, I decided to sit down and take some notes and summarize it in a way. How can the damage done to a family be repaired? How can hurt feelings, anger, fear, guilt, and remorse be assuaged? Practicing these principles, these steps in all our affairs makes putting them to work at home more important than anywhere else. This chapter will, and it's not written here, but the point I'm trying to make is that incorporating this way of living into the lives of all of the family members is what this is all about. How to do that. Chapter 9, The Family Afterwards, shows each member how to apply the 12 steps to everyday life, and in doing so, helps restore peace and harmony and love to the family unit. The pitfalls families may encounter are described in detail. Selfishness, self-centeredness may affect all members of the family, as well as the harboring of resentments and being critical or impatient. Ill-considered revelations of past infidelities may damage a marriage. Gossip, harsh criticism, such as the single-minded pursuit of financial success, or speaking of nothing but the new spiritual way of life we have found, will significantly hamper the repair of our home life. The alcoholic's values and priorities may continue to be out of balance for some time. The reestablishing of family and relationships roles places an incredible burden on all members of the family. But here's the most important part: the message we get from family afterward is one of hope. Hope that if we use these spiritual principles as the basis for all aspects of family life, we'll make great strides in bringing us closer to those who are most dear to us. Learning from the mistakes of others, we may avoid many of the pitfalls that are so common to families in early recovery. We have hope that if we practice these principles, we stand the greatest chance of a happy home life. Thank you for allowing me that opportunity to go through that. We are on page 122, chapter 9, The Family Afterwards. Um, Kind of subtitles, alternate titles for this chapter could be, it's also known as Early Sobriety and the Finding Balance chapter, as the Early Sobriety and Finding Balance chapter. Um, but let's break down some of the terms. The term we're already using, the family afterwards. After what? Oh, Anita, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Trying to get my attention. Anita?
I'm not co-hosted.
Oh, oh, did you get kicked off? What's going on here? Why are so many people losing it? Okay, you good?
Yep, thank you.
There we go. All right. Uh, so as I said, the family afterwards. What after what? What are we referring to? Well, it's a number of things. After the recovered alcoholic has adopted this way of life, after the recovered alcoholic has worked or is working the steps, after cleaning up the past and the present, after rejoining society. These are all afterwards. This is all what we're talking about. The family after cleaning up the past, after cleaning up the present, after rejoining society, after becoming spiritually alive once again, after the obsession has been removed, after successful readjustment to life. So there's a lot of afterwards here that we're talking about. After we have adopted this way of life, they all fall under that umbrella. So the family afterwards, um, another afterwards, after the spiritual awakening, um, after they've begun living in the solution. I could go on and on with afterwards, but there's a lot of afterwards, and they all boil down to the same thing. After we've adopted this way of life. And it doesn't mean after you've gone to a few meetings. It doesn't mean after you've gotten out of rehab, you've gone to meetings for a week or two and think you got it down. Nope, that is not what we're talking about. So, the family afterwards, aka the early sobriety and finding balance chapter. As we go through this chapter, sometimes I'll remember to change the term and sometimes I won't. But whenever, like in the first sentence, it says our women folk, instead of women folk, let's just say our partners. Okay, because it's like two wives. There's not two wives. Two wives really is to the loved ones, to partners. So I'm going to try and correct that as we go through here, but the book does say women, or so we'll use that, but I'd like to open it up a little bit. So our partners have suggested certain attitudes a partner may take with the husband, and instead of husband, we can say the alcoholic mate who is recovering. And you may want to highlight recovering in orange because we've used that as the way to identify all the recovering references in the book. The people who say that we're not supposed to use those terms, there's a lot of them in the book. Perhaps they created the impression that he's to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite. All members of the family, and let's highlight this next two sentences, if you will. All members of the family, and let's not just highlight, but underline, should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. I think what he's saying here is that it's like I said, incorporating this way of life into the lives of all the members of the family is what this is about. That learning to practice these principles is invaluable if you wish to have a happy, peaceful, meaningful relationship with all members of the family. But we must lead by example, not by preaching. Like I said, we come out of treatment, we go to a bunch of meetings, we decide that everybody in the family is sick, and we set about to try and fix everybody. That's not what this is about. It's by leading by example, not by leading by preaching. And one of the things I didn't mention that I should is that one of the things that you're going to see throughout this chapter is Bill's way of rewriting some of the things that he's been talking about since the beginning of the book, rewritten the front portion of the book and applying it to specific groups of people they're addressing. He already did that to some extent in Two Wives. He's going to do it a lot more in this chapter because he's talking about different members of the family too. So let's see if we can identify some of those points that he's rewriting from other points in the book. And we just came across one where he says that we should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. If you remember on page 83, it said patience and tolerance are the watchwords. Well, he's saying the same thing again. On page 118, patience and tolerance are the watchwords. So he's saying the same thing here. We have those 7 spiritual principles: patience, tolerance, compassion, forgiveness, humility, love, and goodwill. Those are all the watchwords, not just tolerance, understanding, and love. And he said it earlier in the book, and he's saying it again now, directing it to family members now. And this next sentence, great one. Let's highlight we've already said highlight. Let's underline. This involves a process of deflation. And above deflation, let's put what it is. It's humility. It requires humility. It requires us to put aside our ego. We are part of a family. The alcoholic, his wife, his partner, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude towards himself or herself. Let's highlight this beauty. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. So it's not just the alcoholic who's self-centered. Every member of the family is to some extent self-centered, and they're concerned with having their wishes respected. We talked about going from a life based on self to a life based on God as our center. And the way that manifested, the way it showed itself in our lives is we were approaching everything on the basis of what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? Why should I do it? And the other members of the family are doing the same thing. They're looking to have their wishes respected. They're looking to have their point of view and their concerns addressed. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. The more resentful they become. Discord and unhappiness is a term that Bill used earlier on when he's describing how the stage character tries to run the whole show earlier in the book. And that breeds discord and it breeds unhappiness. And that's what he's about to tell us in the very next sentence. It breeds resentment, but he says this makes for discord and unhappiness. Let's underline and highlight those 3 words: discord and unhappiness. And above it, let's write what it is: spiritual malady. When we go around giving resentments in our family, we're creating an atmosphere that is a spiritual malady. It's not a healthy spiritual way to live. So, the more resentful they become, this makes for discord and unhappiness. It's the ingredients, perfect ingredients for spiritual malady. And why? I'm going to suggest you highlight the rest of the paragraph. Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Does this not sound familiar? Let me finish the sentence, the paragraph. Is it not because he wants to play the lead? Is not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life rather than give? Let's hold our place here and let's turn to page 60, if you will. Page 60, paragraph 4. See if it doesn't sound a little familiar. On page 60, paragraph 4, it says, in 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom of the page, each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If only his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. That's what we were like. This is now how the rest of the family is like. Let me read that again. Is it not? I'm back on page 122, incidentally. Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Right? It's like the actor running the show. He's the number two man thinking he's number one. Is not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? I like the use of the word show, the family show. Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life rather than give? Our goal is to go from being takers to givers. Should be a goal for all of the members of the family. So, cessation of drinking is but the first step from a highly strained, abnormal condition. Let's highlight that sentence and underline the word abnormal. Cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained, abnormal condition. In other words, alcohol was only a symptom, right? Alcohol was only a symptom. Let's hold our place there. Next to it, let's write, see page 19, paragraph 1. Whenever possible, I'm going to try and bounce back and show you some of these references to how he's taken these things and applied it differently here. 19, paragraph 1, 1, 2, 3 lines down from the top. We feel the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. In this paragraph on page 122, he said cessation of drinking is the first step away from a highly strained condition. He goes on to say a much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. That's what he's about to talk about in the rest of the paragraph on page 122. So let's go back to page 122, paragraph 3. We've already said cessation of drinking is but the first step in a strained, abnormal condition. A doctor said to us, and please highlight these next two sentences, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is, to some extent, ill. Let families realize as they start their journey that all will not be fair weather. Remember back on page 82, one of the things Bill said is a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough, right? It's also like the guy who comes up out of the storm cellar, and says, ain't it grandma, the wind stopped blowing, right? If you basically what I'm saying, and I think what Bill is saying here is if you sober up a butcher, you don't suddenly get a brain surgeon. It doesn't work that way. He doesn't come out of it as a brain surgeon. A butcher will remain a butcher. So let family realize as they start their journey that all will not be fair weather. Each in his turn may be footsore and may straggle. Straggle, when you have somebody who's a straggler, what does that mean? Straggling means to wander off the course, to ramble on, to roam around idly. You know, you have a group of people, say in a tour, you always get a few stragglers who are going to go, oh, look at that over there, and kind of disappear from the rest of the group. I would be one of those people in a tour. You know, he'd be talking about whatever they want to talk about, but I see something over here that interests me. So I'm going to go check that out. And the next thing I know, I've lost the rest of the group, which is probably a better thing anyway. But that's what we're talking about, stragglers, that we can become footsore and straggle. We may kind of lose our way a little bit. Okay. Let families realize as they start their journey that all will not be fair weather. Again, I think he's also saying to us, don't go to a few meetings and come home declaring that everybody in the family is sick. Let them figure these things out for themselves. Top of page 123. There will be alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which they may wander and lose their way. I think he's just saying it is another way of saying we're not going to be spiritually magnificent all the time. See if this doesn't sound familiar. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. So next to that sentence, write, see page 87.0, which is where that line is. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. It's saying the same thing. There'll be alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which we may wander and lose our way. We may straggle. We may get footsore. We're not going to be spiritual giants overnight. Suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a family will meet. And I think that should be highlighted in pink, because I interpret that as a promise. If he's saying that these are things you will encounter, sounds like a promise to me. So he's about to lay them out. Suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a promise will meet. Will, it's a certainty. Suppose we suggest how they may be avoided, even converted to good use for others. Let's highlight the rest of this paragraph, if you wouldn't mind. The family of an alcoholic longs for the return of happiness and security. They remember when father was romantic, thoughtful, successful. And even though we've highlighted it, I want to suggest we over-highlight this last sentence in pink, because it's a promise. Today's life is measured against that of other years, and when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Comparing it to other years, they may be unhappy. They may like some of the old person, but this is not the same person. Family confidence in dad is rising high. The good old days will soon be back, they think. Sometimes they demand that dad bring them back instantly. Just like ourselves, the family might say, you know, you've been sober. You making meetings now for 2 whole weeks. Why aren't you a Superman, or why aren't you a Superwoman already? Why isn't the bank account filled up again? Why aren't you home all the time? All of those things, right? Etc., etc., etc. Basically, they blame God for why are you still a jerk? After 2 weeks of going to meetings, why are you still a jerk? Must be that God you're talking about. And once again, you sober up a butcher, you don't get a brain surgeon. Okay, back to the book. I kind of got ahead of ourselves with that God remark. God, they believe, almost owes this recompense on a long overdue account. So as I said, they're blaming God for the fact that you're still a jerk. After 2 weeks of going to meetings, after all that time, you haven't reached spiritual perfection. And it's not just what the family says, it's some of the things that we expect of ourselves sometimes too, I think. But the head of the house has spent years in pulling down the structures of business, romance, friendship, health. These things are now ruined or damaged. And this next sentence should be in pink. It's a promise. It will take time to clear away the wreck. And you may want to write this in the outside margin, which is the left-hand margin. The thing about time is it takes time. Oh God, did I hate that. Every time someone said that to me in the beginning, I wanted to strangle them. because I want now. I want, if you tell me something's going to happen, I want to go to my calendar and write it on a day. This is the day it's going to happen. And God help you if it doesn't happen on that day, because you promised me it would. So I want guarantees. It'll take time to clear away the wreck. And remember, time takes time. One of the hardest lessons for me to learn. Let's highlight this next sentence. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones. Please notice he doesn't say be rebuilt, replaced by finer ones. Remember, way back in the beginning, Dr. Silkworth said that we need to recreate our lives. We're not reinstating what we had. We are creating something that never was before. So these buildings that we've torn down are going to be put back up, but they're rebuilt. They're not remodeled. They're rebuilt. They're not rebuilt, I'm sorry. They are replaced by finer ones. The new structures, and underline new, and please also underline will take years to complete. Once again, time takes time. Father knows he's to blame. Let's underline that. You want to highlight it, fine, but I'm underlining it. Father knows he's to blame. And again, it may not be father, it may be brother, it may be sister. We're talking about the recovering person, the recovered alcoholic, knows he's to blame. It may take him many seasons of hard work to be restored financially, but let's underline, he shouldn't be reproached. Reproach just means criticized. He should not be criticized. That is, if you remember when we went through these chapters in our flyover, where we were isolating the principles of success, that's one of them. One of the principles of success is you should not reproach. You should not go around criticizing people. And here's a beauty. I've got this in pink. It's a promise. Perhaps he will never have much money again, because that's not the most important thing in our lives. But the wise family will admire him for what he, and let's highlight the rest of this, is trying to be rather than what he's trying to get. Underline trying to be, please, and underline trying to get. And in the margin on either side of it, you may want to write, spiritual progress must always precede material progress. Also, from an earlier section of the book, sorry, I didn't write down the page number, but spiritual progress must always precede material progress. Now and then, the family, remember in the section where he may plead for this and for that, and says that until he gets those things, he can't do this or he can't do that. And Bill's answer to those people is nonsense. And I maintain if Bill were writing the book today, he wouldn't use the word nonsense. I think he'd say bullshit. So we're saying the same thing. Now and then the family will be plagued by specters from the past. Specters, just another way of saying ghosts. That the family will be plagued by ghosts from the past. For the drinking career of almost every alcoholic has been marked by escapades, funny, humiliating, shameful, or tragic. The first impulse will be to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. The family may be possessed by the idea that future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. And let's highlight this next sentence. We think that such a view is self-centered and in direct conflict with the new way of living. Let me read that again. The family may be possessed by the idea that future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. Remember on 81, Bill told us if we can forget, so can they. This is almost a contradiction on that. We think such a view is self-centered and in direct conflict with the new way of living. I think what he's saying is we've got to allow God to transform our past into our greatest asset. That's also something we've been told earlier on in the book. By developing a certain humility, a clear recognition of who and what we really are. Through the fifth step, where we admit our shortcomings, we're freed from the power that they had over us. And armed with the truth about ourselves, we can be of great use to others. So we're armed with the truth that we discover in that drastic self-appraisal of 5, 6, and 7. Henry Ford once made a wise remark. In the 1939 dictionary, the word wise was defined as judging correctly from experiences. That's what wisdom is, judging correctly from experiences. Also, possessing skillful learning. Possessing skillful learning. So Henry Ford once made a remark that was judging things correctly based on his experience. Henry Ford once made a wise remark to the effect that, let's highlight the rest of this paragraph, shall we? And underline, experience is the thing of supreme value in life. That it is true only if one is, that is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. That's also a principle of success. I think it also should be highlighted in pink because I think it's a promise. It is also, I believe, a reference to making use of steps 4 through 7. We grow by our willingness to face those things, step 4 and 5, and convert them into assets, step 7. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it's almost the only one. This, and let's highlight and underline, painful past may be of infinite value to others. But try to convince the family of that. We know that it will be. And there's a couple of parts in this paragraph, in the next page or two, that string together some thoughts. This is the first part of the thought, that the painful past may be of infinite value to others. So kind of trust me on this and put an A at the beginning of it. We're going to put together A, B, and C. Here's point A, that the painful past may be of infinite value to others. Families still struggling with their problems. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not, and when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too, and please highlight and underline, willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. That is part B. So part A, our painful past may be of infinite value to others. So we have to be willing to bring those former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Our painful past is of infinite value to others, and it won't be of infinite value to others if we don't take them out of the closet, take them out of the hiding places, and use them to save lives. I've highlighted the next sentence. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. And the rest of this, these next 4 lines, I've underlined and highlighted in pink because I believe this is a promise. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. Let's double underline that, others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. Next to that, I've got a couple of notes. First one is see page 77. So let's hold our place here.
That was pink.
Yes, in pink. I believe that's a promise, those last 4 lines. And we're going to bounce over to page 77, paragraph 0, which says, let me read what we just read on 124 while you're looking at page 77, 0. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avoid death and misery for them. Third line down, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. To be of service to the people about us. So our dark past is our greatest possession when it comes to helping the people about us. We can help avert death. How's that? We can avert death for people because of our painful past. So once again, the painful past may be of infinite value. Part B, be willing to bring forward mistakes no matter how grievous out of their hiding places. We haven't come to C yet, so don't think you've missed anything. We're not there yet. Next paragraph. And we're back to, incidentally, I may notice it's going to be confusing. I did say next to what we just read, cling to the thought that in God's hands, etc. I wrote see page 77. I'm going to suggest you also write see page 20, paragraph 0, because there's another reference to the same thing. Page 20, paragraph 0. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Once again, our dark past is the greatest possession, the key to life and happiness for others. We can avert death and misery for them. So our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends on our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Once again, we're picking pieces from earlier in the book and applying it to the other individuals we're addressing here. So that particular section of page 124, paragraph 2, has 2 references. See page 77.0 and 20.0. Okay, next paragraph. It's impossible to dig up past misdeeds it is possible, not impossible. It is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they can become a blight, a veritable plague. Veritable just means true, a true plague. It's possible to dig up some of the crap that we've done and it becomes a blight, becomes a plague. It doesn't always serve the greater humanity. For example, we know of situations in which the alcoholic or his wife have had love affairs. In the first flush of spiritual experience, they forgave each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Then, under one provocation or another, the aggrieved one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast its ashes about. Right next to that, let's write, see page 117, last line. And if you turn to page 117, the last line, if you keep your attention on that, I'm going to read to you what I just read. Under one provocation or another, the aggrieved one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast its ashes about. And on page 117, it says, so be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. A resentful spirit means dragging up the stuff from the past. And that's what he's talking about on 124, that it may be dragged up and used as a point in an argument. And we've already been advised that if we are disagreeing, he doesn't say that not to disagree. He's trying to teach us how to disagree. And one of the ways he tells us is not to drag up the past. Let's try and focus on whatever it is I screwed up or did wrong now. When we start beginning sentences with you always, or like you did last year, it's a resentful manner. It doesn't help us. So getting back to 124, a few of us have had these growing pains. You may want to highlight growing pains because you outgrow growing pains, don't you? And they hurt a great deal. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until, let's highlight, new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be re-won. Let's keep our place there. And next to that, let's write, see page 99, paragraph 2, last line. So once you get to 99, paragraph 2, let me read what it says on 125, and then we'll go to what it says on page 99. On page 125, we read, husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be re-won. On page 99, the last line of paragraph 2 says, when the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. Now, you may want to apply the entirety of that paragraph, page 99, paragraph 2, to what we're reading about on page 125, because it all fits. It all fits. If I'm going to jump around on page 99, paragraph 2, it says, if the relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis because the former didn't work. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. All of those things back up what we're saying here on page 125. So, getting back to page 125, let me repeat again. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new glory, new victory over pride has been re-won. In some cases, the alcoholic survived this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think, please highlight and underline the rest of this paragraph and at the rest of the sentence. And at the beginning of the sentence, put part C. Because here's part C of our three-part formula. Unless some good, let's circle good, and useful, let's circle useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. In other words, I've already paid that bill. I get an electric bill for last month. I pay that bill. I'm not going to pay that bill again this month and next month and the month after. I've already paid that bill. If you want to yell at me for being late on the current bill, okay. But let's not drag up the bill before or the bill before or the bill before. Past occurrences should not be discussed. So if I stitch together the three things we've just mentioned, going back to 124, paragraph 2, the first statement was the painful past may be of infinite value to other families. So be willing, here's part B, to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. And C, unless some good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. In other words, be positive, be constructive, use that painful past to be of infinite value to others, not using it to be a weapon to bash someone over the head about a current problem. Does that make sense? We're talking about how to use our painful past. Use it for a positive, not as a negative. Okay. I guess he's also saying we never try to save ourselves by harming someone else. And by dragging up something from the past and beating someone over the head with it. That's what we're doing. We're harming others. We're attempting to save ourselves, to win an argument by hurting someone else. We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet. Everyone knows the other's alcoholic troubles. This is a condition which in ordinary life would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip, laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. Above intimate information, let's write what it is: gossip. That there may be a tendency to use gossip. Among us, these are rare occurrences. I don't know. I got a question mark next to that because I do find, unfortunately, those things happen quite often. You walk out the doorway of a lot of live meetings, and what do you come across? A cluster hanging out, smoking cigarettes, talking about somebody else in the group, and not tempering it with love and understanding. It's gossip. So he's telling us not to take advantage of that information that we know about one another. Among us, these are rare occurrences. Let's highlight and underline the rest of this paragraph. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. Be sincere, be constructive. Don't be critical or judgmental. So when we talk about each other, and we do and will continue.
Is this in yellow or pink?
Well, that's a good question. Kathy's asking if it should be in yellow or pink. I think it's a promise too. So maybe it should be in pink. I hadn't thought of that, but I believe you're right. This is a promise. Okay. So again, we talk about each other. It's okay to do that if we are tempering it with love and tolerance. If we are being judgmental, if we are being critical, we're being destructive. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So if I'm talking about somebody and they're not present, and I know, for example, they relapsed, it's not my place to tell the cluster that I know that this person relapsed. And we're about to address that in the very next section, what to do in that kind of situation. But that's an example. I know this intimate detail of somebody's life, but it's not necessarily a plus. It's not constructive. Maybe not constructive. Another principle we carefully observe carefully. And I'm going to suggest you underline the rest of this sentence. We do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. And circle the word sure. You may want to also circle the word carefully in that first part of the sentence. What's that? We do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. Give you an example. There was somebody I used to go to my home group with on Sunday morning in Fairfield, and we'd come in at the same time. We'd sit next to each other. We'd wind up after the meeting getting a couple of people together and going to the diner. And one particular Sunday, he wasn't there, and nobody said a word. The next Sunday, when I arrived and he wasn't there, they started questioning, where is he? Is everything okay? Now, what I knew that they didn't is that he relapsed. I knew not only because he was a friend, but because the week prior to his disappearance, I spent that weekend, Friday through Sunday afternoon, driving around the state of Connecticut, trying to get him admitted to a detox right then and there, not come back when we have a bed for you. We would call around, you got a bed? Okay, we're on the way. Sometimes when we got there, it was too late. So we go somewhere else. But I got this guy into treatment. So I knew that. But I didn't know what he wanted me to say to his home group members. So when I saw him that week on visiting day, I asked him, people of your home group love you. They're asking about you. And when they ask me, I just say, oh, he's okay. He'll be back. He's just around. He's got other things he's doing. And I don't like doing that. So what would you have me do? And he gave me permission. He said, please tell them the truth. They need to know that people who are part of this group, who are long-term members of this group, can and do relapse, but they come back. They can come back. So please don't hold back. Tell anybody from the home group who asks. So I gained their permission. That's what we're talking about here. That is an intimate detail, a relatively intimate detail of somebody's life. They relapse, they're back in treatment. But unless I have their permission, it's gossip. Even though it's true, it's gossip because I don't have permission to do that. So something to think about when we're talking about some people to other people in the fellowship, and we say, oh, that guy relapsed or that one relapsed. Do we have permission to do that? Something to think about. Okay, I love this next sentence. I've got it highlighted. We find it better when possible. And please underline this next principle of success. Stick to your own stories. Stick to your own stories. I know a number of people who have heard somebody tell something in their story and they've liked that particular story. So they adopt it into their story. I've seen that happen. I've been at a meeting where somebody tells of an event, and then a week or two later, somebody at that same meeting tells that same story, but puts himself in the place of the guy who told the story because it sounds better. It sounds funnier. Usually it sounds funnier. People like to steal jokes from other people, but it's not sticking to our own story. Stick to your own story. There's plenty of things in your story that are funny and touching. Tell yours. Don't tell mine. Don't tell Andy's. Don't tell Kathy's. Don't tell Scott's or Stefan's or George's. Tell your story. It's true. Okay. Um, a man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favorably. But please underline criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. In other words, the opposite effect. I lost my place. Right. Oh, members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderable remark has been known to raise the very devil. Let's highlight these next two sentences. And I've underlined this first one. We alcoholics are sensitive people. There's a lot of delicate flowers in AA. We are very sensitive people. In the early days of AA, in the 12 and 12, they talk about this event that there was a study commissioned that was composed of a number of eminent psychologists and psychiatrists to interview some of the original members and come up with some observations, some generalities, what they might have in common. And one of the things that they found, one of the things they concluded, and this may not shock you. Incidentally, it's in the 12 and 12 on page 123 of the hardcover edition. I believe the soft cover edition is, I don't know, 2 or 3 Scott, correct me, 2 or 3 pages off. Is that right? Something like that. In any case, but I'm talking about something that is on page 123, and the study showed, the conclusion was that these people are, one, childish, two, emotionally sensitive, in other words, immature, and three, grandiose. How's that? Pulling your covers, huh? They interviewed all of these alcoholics, and I think it's as true today as it was then. We are childish, we are immature, and we are grandiose. It hurts, but that's why we have a 10th step. Okay? But let's go back to what we just said. We alcoholics are sensitive people. And I think in all seriousness, that's because we are addicted to approval. We love approval. I could be telling my story in front of 100 people, and 99 of them cheer me on, and 99 of them at the lineup after the meeting say, that was great, I love this and I love that. And I will focus on the one guy who didn't get on the line, who's still sitting in his seat, and when I look up at him, he gives me one of these. That sucked. I will obsess over that one guy and not over the 99 people who found something in what was said. We want approval. We want recognition. We have recognition hunger. And that's where the sensitivity shows up. We may not think we're sensitive people, but think about that. You know, when you're talking to a group of people, do you focus on the people that liked what you had to say, or do you focus on the one guy who didn't care for it, who had a comment, who had a crack, who had something that wasn't very nice to say? I do. I always focus on that one guy. That ruins it for me. In any case, we alcoholics are sensitive people. It takes time. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow this serious handicap. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. Let's underline that, are enthusiasts. We know that the word enthusiasm or enthusiastic comes from the Greek word in God. En means in. Theos comes from the Greek word for God, theos. Enthusiasm comes from theos. So to me, enthusiasm has a similar meaning to the word namaste, right? As I understand it, namaste is may the God in me connect with the God in you. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what I've always thought it meant. And that's the same thing as enthusiasm, is the God in me is projected. That's my enthusiasm. But in this case, what does he mean when he says most alcoholics are enthusiasts? Enthusiastic members of our fellowship, what do? They sponsor people. They take commitments. They speak at meetings and conferences. They don't relapse. Chris Schroeder, one of his favorite expressions over and over again is, in his experience, long-term sobriety is achieved by the people who never lose their enthusiasm. Think about it. Andy knows what I'm talking about. Never lose your enthusiasm. It's hard to relapse when you're enthusiastic about this thing. You know, people say don't lose your gratitude like it's a set of keys. I don't know about that, but I'm enthusiastic. And if you need to be enthusiastic, go to a meeting, listen to what is going on, watch what's going on. How could you not be moved by what this is about? How could you not be? How blessed are we? Unbelievable. I think I'm going to stop there. I don't want to go into the rest of this paragraph. We'll start that next week. So let's wrap it up there. Let me stop the recording.